is Act of Worship, your source for commentary and discussion on worship, theology, and culture. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones. Hello, and welcome to the Act of Worship podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones, and we have reached Psalm 16 today. It is hard to believe that we will soon be through 20 chapters of the book of Psalms. I've been committed and faithful in diligently putting out these psalms, setting them to music. As I've mentioned before, some of them make better tunes than others, but it is scripture, so it is always beneficial, no matter how strange it may seem when David is crying out, "Bash my enemy's head against the rocks," or whatever he's saying. It is still beneficial for us as believers. And so here we are at Psalm 16. And this is a mitchem, which we've come across that term before. It is probably a musical or liturgical term. David wrote this. He was a musician, so it is likely that. And so Psalm 16, this psalm expresses confidence in the Lord, although it's difficult to tell whether the crisis that he's referring to is past or present to David. Death could be imminent for him here. You'll see that in verse 10. He references Sheol, and often writers did that when they faced death. And so here we are in Psalm 16. Let me read this 11-verse psalm for you. Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the saints in the land, they are excellent ones, in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. So the psalmist here, David, begins this psalm with an invocation of the Lord and a plea for help. In verse 1, he says, "Preserve me, O God." And this line indicates that the crisis is still present to David. If you know the story of David and what he faced throughout his life, he faced a lot of crises. If you think of Saul trying to kill him, I'm reading through 1 Samuel right now. Saul multiple times tried to kill David, and on one occasion David had the opportunity to kill Saul and did not do it because Saul was God's anointed king. And so David faced difficulties. He faced even danger of his life. In verse 3, he says, "As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight." Saints, literally those who are set apart, is what this means. This is God's elect people. So we go on, and then in verse 4, he says another god. He refers to people who run after other gods. The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply, or in some translations, who acquire other gods. It's kind of ironic that someone would worship something that they acquire or that they make themselves. I've met people in other countries who make little wooden statues or gods and worship these things that they've made with their hands. And David says here that The sorrows of these people who do these things will multiply. Another god. This was very prevalent during David's time, and especially during Old Testament times. The danger of worshiping other gods was always present in Israel. You think about the people of God, even after they were led out of bondage in Egypt, at some point they decided, let's build a golden calf. So they build this thing themselves and then worship a golden calf. And we laugh about that today. But this was something that was likely in ancient Israel. Now read 1 Kings chapter 18. Baal, other gods were prevalent throughout the land of Israel. And so the Psalms really emphasize that the powers ascribed to pagan gods belong to Yahweh. Psalm 29 is an excellent reference of this. And David understood this, that although people throughout the land of Israel, you think about it, we don't have to deal with that very much here in our Western civilization, although that certainly exists. But there are many other cultures where pagan gods and idols, we can think of idolatry as worshiping something that is not God, giving our attention and focus to that, whether that is money or time or entertainment, whatever it may be. But there are literally people around the world who worship idols that they have built or that someone else has built. Statues, if you will. Inanimate objects. Even the god Baal that you read of in the Old Testament. There were multiple Baal gods and statues around the land of Israel that people worshipped. And when I say worshipped, I mean offered sacrifices to. And so we don't experience that really in our American civilization, but it does exist and has existed and was prevalent during this time. And the psalmist here, David, is saying, he's emphasizing that the powers that people ascribe to these pagan gods belong to Yahweh, belong to God, the one true God. And then in verse 4, he continues and he says, their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. That is of the foreign gods. These are two examples of ways that the religious systems of the surrounding nations tried to compel their gods to help them. They gave them drink offerings of blood. Often people would even hurt themselves. They would cause pain to their bodies, make themselves bleed to try to convince the gods that they believed had power to help them. In verse 5, the Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. So he's just spoken of these pagan gods and people who worship them. And then he says the contrasting statement that while they do this, the Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. Three metaphors that describe life as a gift of God. The Lord is my chosen portion, my cup. You hold my lot. Three metaphors there. And then he says in verse 6, the lines have fallen for me in pleasant pastures. Once again, probably metaphoric for the psalmist's quality of life. Not only is the life that God has given him secure, as he says in verse 5, it's also pleasant. So David here mixes the reality of his difficulties that he faces when he says, preserve me, for in you I take refuge. He could be facing some sort of difficulty here. But it also contrasts, or it juxtaposes, I should say, it juxtaposes his confidence in the Lord. Even though he's in a difficult time, God is with him. And in verse 7, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. That word night is significant. Notice he doesn't say in the daylight my heart instructs me. It says in the night. He is making it clear that even though he is going through a dark time, that the Lord is with him. And so he blesses the Lord, the Lord gives him counsel. So he praises the Lord. And what's interesting is he says, My heart instructs me. The literal translation here is kidneys. My kidneys instruct me. Now, that may sound strange, and the reason translators use heart is because the heart is represented as the seat of the emotions in our culture, whereas in biblical cultures, the kidneys or the bowels were the seed of the emotions. Can you imagine someone, husband or wife, whoever, saying, I love you with all of my bowels? That wouldn't have been so uncommon in this time. And then in verse 10, this is where you kind of suspect that he might be facing imminent death. You will not abandon my soul to Sheol. The immediate application of this psalm is to David and to the Old Testament saints. It refers to deliverance from the immediate threat of death, but it points prophetically to the Son of David, whom the historical David reflected and anticipated. Both Peter and Paul recognized that Jesus was the ultimate fulfillment of this psalm. Let me read you Acts chapter 2, verse 25 through 28. For David says, this is in the book of Acts, for David says concerning him, I saw the Lord always before me, for he is at my right hand that I might not be shaken. Therefore my heart was glad and my tongue rejoiced. My flesh also will dwell in hope. For you will not abandon my soul to Hades, or Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You have made known to me the paths of life. You will make me full of gladness with your presence. And then Acts 13:35. Therefore he says also in another psalm, you will not let your Holy One see corruption. So even Peter and Paul understood this truth that God is with them even through difficulties. And you think about what the apostles went through. All of them, except for John, martyred. All of them at least faced some sort of persecution. But martyred, dipped in burning oil, killed with a sword, crucified, filleted alive. These were things that the apostles went through. But they understood, as David understood, that God is with them, that they could face the difficulties, that they could face the dark times. And so this is a psalm that confidently declares the fact that God is with us even in difficult times. And so this has been set to music in such a way, declarative, authoritative. God is with us. So let your heart worship to this Psalm 16 as you listen to it. And thank you for listening today to the Act of Worship podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones. Preserve me, O God, for I'm trusting in you. Yes, you are my master, I said to the Lord. Beside you I do not possess any good. In your holy messengers I take delight. Those running to idols will multiply griefs. I will not pour out their drink offerings of blood, nor will I confess their vain names with my lips. The Lord's my inherited portion and cup. You care for my lot where the lines fell to me, my pleasant and lovely inherited land. The Lord who gives counsel to me I will bless, for surely my heart teaches me through the night. The Lord ever present before me I keep, He stands at my right hand, I shall not be moved. My glory rejoices, my heart is made glad, and also my flesh will live safely at ease. For you'll not abandon my soul to the grave. Your godly one you will preserve from decay. Life's path you will show me, full joy is with you. Your right hand holds pleasures for me evermore.